Recused himself.
For him to have taken the job and for him to immediately have recused himself is a disgrace.
He's had a one-track mind on this guy, and yet through humiliation after humiliation, Jeff Sessions has resisted the president's efforts to force him out. And now we're learning that he's not leaving voluntarily. In his undated resignation letter, there it is, Sessions addressed the president saying, "At your request, I am submitting my resignation." The president's decision to replace Sessions with his former chief of staff gives Trump a chance to stop Mueller in his tracks. In fact, the new acting attorney general, Matt Whitaker, predicted last year that anyone replacing Sessions may effectively halt the special counsel's investigation.
Well, I could see a scenario where Jeff Sessions is replaced with a recess appointment, and that attorney general doesn't fire Bob Mueller, but he just reduces his budget so low that his investigation grinds to almost a halt.
Well, joining me right now is Michael Schmidt of the New York Times. Hakeem Jeffries is a Democratic congressman from New York. Mimi Rocha is a former Rocha, I'm sorry, is a federal prosecutor. And David Corn, of course, is Washington Bureau Chief for Mother Jones. I want you all to get your thoughts in. A huge day. We thought it would be a morning after, Michael. It's not a morning after. It's an afternoon of. A dramatic step. How far is this strategic that he's going to move on to find a way to stop Mueller or make his report irrelevant or whatever? And how much of this is just instinctive revenge?
Well, this is something that Trump has wanted to do since the second month he was in office, March of 2017. He believes that Sessions' decision to recuse was the original sin that allowed Mueller to be appointed. You have to understand, the president sees the position of attorney general as someone who should be most loyal to him. That is more important than the law and following the facts. That is what he sees. He sees it as a personal attorney to him. He's expressed this in private. He's got it in public. He has said publicly that he never would have made Sessions his attorney general if he knew he was going to recuse himself. He saw the recusal as the most disloyal thing. Finally, today, he did something that he's wanted to do for a very, very long time. He had been very close with Jeff Sessions, if we recall, the first biggest national Republican politician to embrace his campaign. And now Trump gets to do what he's wanted to do for a very, very long time.
David, I want to go to you because you follow these conspiracies pretty well. What is his goal now to get rid of Sessions, bring in Whitaker, his guy, is probably his toady. He's another Nunes, is what I can tell. Brings this guy in and finds some way to, when the report comes from Mueller, if Mueller's around long enough to remake his report, just bury it. Hey, I don't want it. This is worthless. I'll just put this aside. How far can he go with this gambit?
Well, we've talked about this in the past. It's unclear to what degree Trump thinks strategically. He certainly thinks about impulse. And revenge, we've talked about this too in the past, is one of the things that motivates him the most. And he's always said, if someone screws you over, you screw him over 15 times more. So he's waited until the first moment possible to get rid of Sessions. So he wants him gone. What does he want? I mean, Michael's right. He doesn't just want a protector. He wants a Tom Hagen from The Godfather. He wants his own Roy Cohn. And then what comes next comes what's next. And whether it's squeezing the funding out of the Mueller investigation, outright firing him, coming up with other distractions, I don't think Trump has thought that far down the line. But he knows if he has his guy there, all this is possible. And we still don't know when there will be a report, if there will be a report, how much longer Mueller has to go. He's just getting his person in there. So if he ever wants to pull the trigger, he has someone who can do that for him.
Okay, by appointing Matt Whitaker as his acting attorney general, the president appears to have installed a Trump loyalist at the top of the Justice Department. For instance, Whitaker has publicly defended Donald Trump Jr.'s decision to take that meeting with Russians to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. Remember the June 2016 meeting at the Trump Tower? Let's watch him on that.
To suggest that there's a conspiracy here, I mean, you would always take that meeting. You would have somebody from your campaign take the meeting to try to get the information. If you have somebody that you trust that is saying you need to meet with this individual because they have information about your opponent, you would take that meeting.
Well, Whitaker also wrote in the 2016 op-ed in USA Today that he would indict Hillary Clinton if he had prosecuted her case. Whitaker also called efforts to pass legislation to protect Mueller's job a mistake, saying you cannot have anyone unaccountable to an executive branch Anyway, already protected enough. Well, that was his shorthand for it. Leave. You're not going to protect this guy, Mueller, from anybody. Most recently, the New York Times reported in September that Chief of Staff John Kelly, this is so cute, privately described Whitaker as, quote, the West Wing's eyes and ears in the Department of Justice. The president has long considered it war with him. So he's been the mole over there for the president, and now he's the top man. Congressman, it's well, everybody says, well, Trump's going to get stopped. Somebody's going to stop him. Nobody's stopping him.
Well, the American people are beginning to stop him, and I think that's one of the things that happened last night in giving us control of the House of Representatives. And if his ultimate objective is to try to prevent Mueller's investigative report from becoming public, he obviously fails to understand that on January 3rd, when we take control of the House of Representatives, we will have oversight and subpoena power and will not allow him to bury any report and or hide the facts from the American people.
So suppose we don't know what Mueller's going to do. Do you know? Is he going to go to indictments? Is he going to go to a grand jury? Is he going to go to a report? What do you think he's going to do, Mueller, if he's not stopped by Trump?
It's not clear that he's concluded in terms of indictments moving forward. There was definitely a pause as a result of the window inside of the election. We're now outside of the window, and I think that that investigation will continue, and we're likely to see some more people held accountable. The law does provide that ultimately he does have to issue a report only to the Department of Justice, not to the American people, because the independent counsel has expired. That's why it was so important for us to take back control of the House of Representatives on the oversight responsibility, because we can prevent them from burying that report.
Mimi, I have a hunch that Trump has very few people he's not willing to dump. Throw him under the bus. He's done it with so many of his people. And then he mocks them afterwards. Look what he did to the Republicans that didn't endorse him or embrace him, as he put it, in the election. He laughed at them. He loves saying you're fired. That's his giggle. His kids are different. It's clear he cares about Ivanka and her husband, Jared. My instinct has been, at some point, Mueller's going to prosecute them because of the Trump Tower meeting and all the involvements they've had, especially the son, Donald Trump Jr., because of the Trump Tower meeting. Trump can't allow his kids to be indicted because people have told him he can't pardon them. So doesn't he have to stop Mueller in his tracks, like right now?
Well, I think that's what he's trying to do. And I think that's why this is, I think, Chris, as bad as him having fired Mueller, maybe even worse. And let me tell you why. First of all, he's done it in this sort of stealth way. I mean, I don't know that I've thought of Trump as a very smart, calculating guy, but he is here now.
He is president. He got there somehow.
Well, we can debate that another time. But
when I walk past Trump Tower here on Fifth Avenue, I don't know about you, but I'm impressed. But he does own that building.
This is a very calculated move that he did. He got this guy in who can now control not only the Mueller investigation, but the investigations in the Southern District of New York into the Trump Organization, any cases that Mueller farmed out to the Eastern District of Virginia.
Whitaker's got all this.
He has got more control now over lots of different arms going into Trump's family, and that is really dangerous, and he's got cover now.
We only got one lawmaker here. Congressman, let me ask you about I've watched the pattern of this thing. Puts in Kavanaugh. Why Kavanaugh? There's a lot of guys around like Kavanaugh. He picked the guy who said, the President of the United States has extraordinary executive authority, and you can't really limit that authority. And then he brings in this guy Whitaker who thinks the same exact thing. What's going to stop him from just claiming the extraordinary power as President of the United States to do whatever he wants to do with his departments, including the Justice Department? What are you guys going to do about it? Will you impeach him?
Well, we're not going to go down that road right now. We have to allow the process to play itself out. But I think the good men and women of the Department of Justice and the FBI won't allow the type of shenanigans that he may try to undertake to go forward without it being exposed. And now they have an empowered House of Representatives.
But this is their new boss we're looking at.
It is their boss, but they also know that we have a constitutional responsibility to be a check and balance on an out-of-control executive. And the cover-up caucus that had been in charge of the House of Representatives for the last 2 years is no longer in the majority.
You mean Nunes and company?
Nunes and company. He's the lead one of the cover-up caucus, but there's a whole bunch of them, unfortunately.
Let me go back to Michael. The reporting on this, where is it going tonight and tomorrow? How far Trump is heading in this direction of strategic defense?
Well, that's really the question. And how long would Whitaker be there? Is Whitaker the person that Trump wants to be the attorney general in the long run? is this someone, is he testing him out here, or is he putting him there hoping to keep him there, even if Congress won't confirm the person that he wants? There's just a lot that we don't know here and what the president's true intentions are.
How about Lindsey Graham? Does he want Lindsey in there?
Well,
does he want Lindsey there?
Lindsey Graham, Chris Christie, would those folks come in? And is he going straight for Mueller? Does he want to have Mueller fired? I think that would create a massive reaction that would be negative for the president. The president has some PTSD from the firing of Comey, some real scar tissue there.
He's got 54 senators, too, maybe.
Yeah, it's not clear how the president often likes to do things to distract, and he probably knows deep down inside that yesterday's election was not as great for him as he made it out to be at his press conference.
Chris.
Go ahead, David. Because I see that number of senators is critical to his new confidence in this area. That he doesn't need the 2 women for another confirmation. If there's a choice issue there in terms of a woman's right to choose, he can still operate without Collins and without Murkowski. He's got enough Republican males, to put it bluntly, to get a confirmation.
Chris, we call this the Mueller investigation. But really, it's an FBI investigation. It was started by the FBI after Comey was fired. The special counsel was appointed to oversee it and run it. But so if you get rid of Mueller, that doesn't necessarily end the investigation. You would have to basically get the FBI to shut it down, to fire all those prosecutors, and that brings the FBI director and lots of other officials into the picture. And the question is, would they go along with it? So I think to truly get away with smothering this, even strangling it budgetarily, speaking, would take a lot of people to go along with that. And if they don't, you could have something that looks 100 times worse than Nixon's Saturday Night Massacre.
So you don't think he'll fire Mueller?
Oh, I'm not sure right away, but I'm not sure he understands this. You get rid of Mueller, it doesn't mean the investigation goes away unless you're willing to order the FBI to shut it down, which is kind of what Nixon, when he lost his presidency over, by trying to shut down the FBI investigation of Watergate.
Well, I know it's Trump, and you know him too, David. And everybody else here knows him. And Trump sees the presidency as a family acquisition. He sees the federal government as a family business, and the way he looks at it, perhaps like an organized criminal at times. I think he looks about it this way. There's a mention made of a wartime consigliere here. He wants somebody like that in the Justice Department for him. He's not going to take a licking. He's not going to let his kids go to prison.
You're right. I think that's right.
He's not going to let that happen. He will not let that happen. And I'm just watching how many steps will he take to prevent that from happening, because he will take those steps. Thank you, Michael Schmidt, U.S. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries of New York. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
And Mimi Rocha and David Corn. Coming up, before Democrats in the House take office this January 3rd, President Trump is taking the fight to them, as we've said. Look at his fight today. What a press conference. It was street fighting. Not much dignity there. Not much dignity at all. And this is Hardball, where the action is. Welcome back to Hardball. With the news that he has decided to fire his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, President Trump has ensured a big political battle with a new Democratic majority in the House, which comes in on January 3rd. Even before the Sessions news, Trump signaled a combative posture today toward the Democrats. He warned if they use their new powers, running the House, the power to subpoena, he won't hesitate to use the Senate Republicans to go after them. It's already a street fight. Let's watch him.
They can play that game, but we can play it better, because we have a thing called the United States Senate, and a lot of very questionable things were done, between leaks of classified information and many other elements that should not have taken place.
Well, in fact, Trump even went so far as to say he would benefit if that happened. He wants a fight.
It'll probably be very good for me politically. I could see it being extremely good politically, because I think I'm better at that game than they are.
Could be. Joining me right now is Heidi Presbilla, NBC News national political correspondent. Charlie Sykes, of course, is contributing editor at the Weekly Standard. Thank you both. It looks to me like, I mean, we all watched that press conference today. He was in a fighting mood. The press was to some extent, too, but he wanted a fight. He wanted to make a little blood show on people's noses. He wanted to look like a fight. And it seems to me that I've never heard in my life a president saying, I'm going to use the subpoena power of one branch of the U.S. Congress to prevent the other one from doing their job of oversight. Heidi.
Oh, well, it will be a test, Chris, for congressional leaders, because clearly the House has shown by the investigations that they pursued that they're willing to play ball and go along with this, and it's led to a deterioration in bipartisanship there. And in the Senate, we've not seen that. So this will be a test for congressional leaders, because I am positive that since it happened in the House, the president will also make good on leaning on Senate leadership and Senate committee chairs. But he doesn't, just like he doesn't control the House, he doesn't control the Justice Department. He shouldn't control the Justice Department, and he doesn't control the Senate.
Let me ask you, you got some news?
That's right, Chris. So I was just communicating with Senator Blumenthal, and since May, Senator Blumenthal has been working on a break-the-glass option to try and protect Mueller's work. As you know, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has refused to move legislation to protect Mueller that was moved out on a bipartisan basis from the Judiciary Committee. Well, this is a break-the-glass option that would simply require that Mueller's work be protected in the event that he is stifled or fired. And Senator Blumenthal has been talking with Republicans about this, Chris, for a couple of months. He thinks that there is some support for it because it is simply, at this point, about transparency, to make sure that no matter what happens, if Mueller were squeezed, that his work could be preserved.
Well, that's a great question, Charlie, because we were talking to a member of the House Judiciary Committee, talked about that committee's attempt, now that they have the majority come January 3rd in the House, to somehow subpoena the records of Robert Mueller. And even if he can't publicly pronounce them, they could get the records and pronounce the results of it for their own impeachment purposes themselves. Charlie? Okay, Charlie, let me go back to Charlie. Can you hear me now? Let me go back to Heidi. We've had this problem. Heidi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, let's talk about that. What about the steps that can be taken by either houses? You raised the question of Blumenthal from Connecticut talking about it, but he's got to get that through the Republican majority. They've got maybe 54 Republican senators standing in the way and helping the president, protecting the president, not questioning the president or helping Mueller, but hurting Mueller.
Right, and the early indications are that we've seen a major shift from last summer, Chris, when it seemed that there was bipartisan agreement in the Senate that they would stand strong against any move on the special counsel. The early reactions that we're seeing out of the Senate are simply, one of the strongest is from, frankly, the guy who's leaving, Senator Flake, who says we must move this legislation, but we're not seeing a strong response from anybody else. And Democrats, well, they don't take control of the House until January. So folks that I talk to, sources that I talk to, say if anything happens, it could happen pretty quickly in terms of Mueller potentially issuing indictments, and a decision will need to be made in the Senate whether there's going to be any kind of pushback. And right now, we just don't see that indication.
Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell warned House Democrats of using their new authority they'll get in January to launch investigations of Trump. Let's watch him.
The whole issue of presidential harassment is interesting. I remember when we tried it in the late 90s. We impeached President Clinton. His numbers went up and ours went down, and we underperformed in the next election. So the Democrats in the House will have to decide just how much presidential harassment they think is good strategy. I'm not so sure it'll work for them.
You know, I don't think the Democrats should take advice from Mitch McConnell because he's not operating or speaking in their interest or in the interest of the country in this regard. Why would he tell them not to take up their constitutional responsibility if Mueller comes out with basically the basis for an impeachment charge and not to operate on it? Why would anybody think that's the right thing for America, Charlie?
Yeah, well, I don't think they're going to take that advice. You know, it occurs to me, though, that President Trump insulted two institutions today. He insulted the U.S. Senate by implying that they would become complicit in his obstruction of justice by going after the House of Representatives. That would be interesting to hear from, Mitch McConnell on that as well. He also really insulted the Department of Justice by putting in the acting attorney general's position really a pliable lackey as opposed to a credible attorney general. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. You know, I understand the people who say that they're seeing this strategic genius here. This almost smacks of desperation when you think about the president waiting till the day after the midterm elections, this day when we know that Mueller, is maybe, ending this pause, to take an action this extreme, this dramatic.
Well, how about this? Suppose he knows that Mueller was waiting until the election was over. You know, like Michael was waiting for the mother to die before he kills his brother. He's waiting for that. Yeah. You know how it's done. So he says, wait a minute, he's going to operate any day now. He's going to come out with something against me and my family. I'm going to operate first. I'm going to get rid of this AG I don't trust. I'll put in a guy that you say is pliable. I think that's fair. And I'm going to begin to have steps ready to take against Mueller even before. How do we know this is the last step? How do we not know, Charlie and Heidi, tomorrow morning we get up and there's another step he takes along the lines of, I'm going to prevent Mueller from grabbing my kids? Because I really think that's what it's about. Trump has got to protect his family against indictment.
Well, Chris, the problem here is transparency at this point, right? Because this is what was described to me and my colleagues when we were reporting on this issue as the so-called straitjacket approach that Judiciary Committee Democrats in both the House and the Senate were concerned about, that if there is that next step taken, we just won't know. Because the bigger threat all along has not been that the president would outright find a way to fire Mueller, but that he would squeeze him and cut off his resources. And that is...
We'll find out.
We wouldn't know, at least at this point.
Well, Charlie, that's already something that the new Attorney General, the acting Attorney General, Whitaker, has already said, that he could start starving the guy. Suppose he says no more typewriters, no more computers, no more assistants, no more clerical help. You're finished, buddy. Your cell date is up. Now, report or go away, or neither. Just don't talk anymore because you're not having it. I'm not going to pay for your room rent anymore. What's to stop this new Attorney General from doing that, the Mueller?
Well, that almost strikes me as too clever by half, as if we won't find out about it. Look, if he says no to the special prosecutor, remember, this has to be reported to Congress. He also is probably not going to be able to shut down the Southern District investigations. You know, and that's why I think that, you know, maybe they think that this is the way that they're going to, you know, have a stealth Saturday night massacre. Yeah. But nothing like this is going to be, there will be transparency at some point. And that's why what happened in Congress, this has changed the reality. And I'm not sure that the president fully understands how much trouble he is in or what he has done by taking this particular step. But there's no question about it. I mean, it is a significant thug move by the president to take this action today, you know, when we're hearing about the anxiety about Don Jr. I mean, this is the day that's been circled on the calendar for a very, very long time, and it certainly indicates that he was fearful that, that Mueller might drop something very, very, very soon. Well,
as Charlie Shakespeare said, whether to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune or to take up arms against a sea of troubles and end them. And my question, Trump is probably thinking very much like Hamlet and is thinking, I better act. Anyway, thank you, Heidi Presbilla. Thank you, Charlie Sykes. Up next, President Trump flips the script. Listen to this.
That's such a racist question. That's such a racist question. Honestly, I mean, I know you have it written down and you're going to tell me. Let me tell you, it's a racist question.
Well, the journalist accused of asking a racist question joins us next in Hardball. You know her, Yamisha Alcindor, one of our great people here. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Hardball. During the closing days of the midterm campaign, which was ended yesterday, President Trump proudly called himself a nationalist. That's the new word he loved. He said he wanted to end birthright citizenship, of course, the 14th Amendment right to everyone born in this country to be a citizen. And he warned that a group of asylum seekers from Honduras were heading toward the border to invade, that was his word, the United States of America. At his free-willing and combative press conference today, Trump sounded a defiant note, refusing to take any responsibility for the tone that he set in the campaign.
How do you see your role as a moral leader?
Go ahead,
Mr. President, just how do you see your role as a moral leader?
Go ahead. There's so many people, I'm sorry.
As a moral leader, though.
I think I am a great moral leader, and I love our country.
Why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
I'm not.
Is that how you view citizens of this country?
I'll tell you what, we won a lot of elections last night. We did very well last night.
But in many ways, I think it's going
to have a very positive impact.
Michael Cohen recently said you called black voters stupid.
That's false.
Omarosa has accused you of using the N-word, and the rapper Little John has said you called him Uncle Tom. What's your response?
I don't know who Little John is. He
was on The Apprentice.
I don't know. Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Have you ever made racist remarks?
No, I would never do that, and I don't use racist remarks.
Wow. Well, the president also lashed out at Yamisha Alcindor, the PBS NewsHour, accusing her of asking a, quote, racist question. And here's that exchange.
On the campaign trail, you called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists. Now people are also saying
I don't know why you'd
that
say
the
that. It's such a racist
There
question.
are some people that say that now the Republican Party is seen as supporting white nationalists because of your rhetoric. What do you make of that?
I don't believe it. I don't know. Why do I have my highest poll numbers ever with African Americans? Why do I have among the highest poll numbers with African Americans? I mean, why do I have my highest poll numbers? That's such a racist question. Honestly, I mean, I know you have it written down and you're going to tell me. Let me tell you, it's a racist question.
I'm joined right now by Yamiche Alcindor herself, White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour. Of course, Eugene Robinson joins us up here from New York. Yamiche, that was a pretty fraught moment there. Tell me about your reaction to him.
Well, really, I think that the president was frustrated because reporters were doing what we do best, which is ask questions and really demand answers. This is a president who, as you said, has talked about ending birthright citizenship. Just today, a white nationalist, a man named Patrick Casey, who heads up a group called Identity Europa, was tweeting about visiting the White House. This is someone who is a self-described white nationalist. So I think the president his anger was boiling over there, and I think my reaction is the reaction of most reporters, which is really to press on. The next question I asked was about middle-class tax cuts, because I can't allow the president to just kind of go off and not really stay on target and really do my job.
You know, this president has he does observe what you might call today identity politics. He has different knocks on different groups. I mean, like, white women are ugly, horse face, comments he said about Carly Fiorina. African-American women are low IQ or unqualified. One Yale law graduate running for office down there in Georgia is unqualified. Did you get a sense from all that led you into the question you raised about the tenor he said? I mean, based upon real language he's used, not implication.
Well, I think that the president his anger was boiling over because of a lot of things. At one point during the press conference, he was literally pacing back and forth. I thought he might walk off. I think that some people see this as the president attacking a woman of color. Of course, I'm a black woman. He was also attacking April Ryan, telling her to sit down. Jim Acosta, he was saying that you're rude for asking about immigration, and he was calling reporters hostile. I'm not sure if the president was singling out people because of their race, but I will say that the president was obviously very upset with the reporting that we were trying to do there. And I've talked to some White House aides who say that the president feels particularly aggrieved when we ask about white nationalists, because he feels as though that's an unfair question.
Well, let's talk about the president and his campaign, Gina. You come from South Carolina, and I was thinking about Georgia and Florida, where you had incredible African-American candidates. Do you think Trump's tenor and language, from the caravan to all the ethnic comments he's made about African American, the way he sort of talks, to put it lightly, do you think it had an influence on those defeats? Did he give permission to those voters?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I think it was racist to say that Stacey Abrams is not qualified, to say that Andrew Gillum is not equipped to be equipped. Right.
Sounds like Jimmy the Greek.
Exactly. That's
Don't have the necessaries.
Exactly where I was going. And that's that's flat out racist. But I think his attack on Yamiche. Yamiche was there, I wasn't, and so she felt anger coming out of the president. To me, it looked deliberate. It looked staged, because this, he is reinforcing this notion that he has encouraged, that there's all this racism being directed against white people, and that sort of reinforced that. I thought his whole performance today, watching it on television, looked intentional to me. It looked like he came in there ready to pick a fight. He calls on Jim Acosta, his great antagonist, knowing what's going to happen. Then he goes to Peter Alexander, with whom he's had, back and forth. He yells at April Ryan, knowing that she's going to yell back. I mean, it was just... It looked to me like a guy who wanted to be seen having a fight with the media.
Yamiche, if he wants to make the press look like his enemy, he did a pretty good job. If you think about ginning up a fight on the street corner, I've been using the conceit tonight of a street fight. It does seem like he's lost the argument. He lost the House of Representatives for the rest of his term here. He lost the big argument in the popular vote last night. Clearly, the popular vote of this country went against him. But he wants to somehow start some other way of judging the way things are. What did you think of the whole thing with you and everybody else today going head-to-head with him in the press conference?
Well, I think two things. The first is that I think the president does feel wounded by the fact that Republicans lost control of the House. This was a president who campaigned, even though he didn't say that, even though he's saying that he focused on Senate races, he called a lot of House candidates up on stage with him and was barnstorming across the country, making the case that Republicans should hold on to both the House and the Senate, and he lost one of the big chambers. It's going to be a thorn in his side for this. As far as him going back and forth with reporters, I think yes, he was probably in some ways maybe looking for a little bit of a fight. He didn't get a fight out of me. People who know me would know what I look like when I'm fighting, and I wasn't fighting there.
Yeah.
What I was doing was posing a question, which is what reporters are going to do. And again, I go back to the fact that there was a white nationalist today tweeting about being at the White House today. So my question was timely, and it was fair, and it was what I do.
What did you see in his eyes when he's looking at you?
I mean, I saw someone who I think was very, very frustrated and very, very angry at the fact that I was bringing up the fact that some people think that he's emboldening white nationalists. I think that there was maybe, as Eugene said, there was maybe some performance there, but I think he was genuinely frustrated with reporters because he was going back and forth, and he had just finished yelling at Rachel. I'm sorry, he had just finished yelling at April Ryan and Jim Acosta and Peter Alexander, and then here comes Yamiche with this question about white nationalism that he can't stand.
It's so amazing to sit there and watch somebody I know as well as I know you fighting it out with the President of the United States on equal terms. It's something else. I guess that's good for our democracy, despite all this other hellish stuff we're talking about. The good thing is you can get in there and duke it out with him. Thank you. I don't want to soft-smoke this because it was awful what he said in the campaign, and I do agree with you in your intimations and your reporting about this nationalist thing here. But the irony thing about nationalism, African Americans have been in this country a lot longer by centuries than most white people. The idea that you're not part of the nation is an absurdity, and, you know, it's just pure racism. Anyway, thank you. That is racism. Yamiche Alcindor, Eugene Robinson, thank you. Up next, after taking a victory lap for a perceived victory last night, perceived? Whose perception? Trump turns around and fires his AG. He wanted to start another stink, which he's done. The front pages tomorrow won't be about the election. It'll be about that picture and the fact that he's finally dumped the guy who he thinks betrayed him. But what's he afraid of? How close is Mueller to getting him and his family? That's the big, well, as we used to say, $64,000 question. You're watching Hardball. Welcome back to Hardball. Democrats took back the House last night, as we all know, flipping at least 28 seats, maybe 14 more. But in the Senate, Republicans expanded their majority, picking up 2 additional seats, with the Florida and Arizona seats races still to be decided. I think they can get as far as 54. In a press conference today, President Trump took a victory lap and took credit for the Republican gains. Let's watch.
This vigorous campaigning stop, the blue wave that they talked about, I don't know if there ever was such a thing, but could have been. If we didn't do the campaigning, probably there could have been.
What lesson did you learn most from looking at those results? Was there one thing that, as you kind of reviewed them, that you'll change your strategy, not just for Congress, but kind of going forward? And then just a follow-up question.
Well, I think the results that I've learned and maybe confirmed, I think people like me. I think people like the job I'm doing, frankly.
You're a man who likes to win, but last night was not an absolute victory for you.
I'll be honest. I thought it was a very close to complete victory.
Well, a little over an hour later, the president tweeted that he'd fired his attorney general. Let's bring in tonight's Hardball Roundtable. Former New York Democratic Congressman and DCCC Chairman Steve Israel, and former New York Governor Christine Todd Whitman, a Republican, and Gabe DeBenedetti, a national correspondent for New York Magazine. Well, thank you all. We brought you together as a sample of Americana. We're covering all the bases, almost all the bases. Yeah. But